Welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I am your host, Jill Wright, time management strategist, author, podcaster, and speaker. I'm here today because we are chatting with a brand new guest, Kiara Brown. She is a licensed professional counselor. She specializes in anxiety and trauma, helping those who have spent their lives as caregivers find the balance that they need for self-care, boundaries, and so much more. She's the owner of a private practice where she empowers her clients to prioritize their well-being before they burn out or illness forces them to slow down. I think we all know this very well, that if we ignore the signs and ignore the symptoms, our body will eventually shut us down and force us to rest. So this is what we're covering today on the Grow Like a Mother podcast. If you are interested in more discussion about overcoming trauma, self-care, wellness, whether that be emotional, mental, medical, I want you to make sure you go back, tune into the episode I did with Angela Lay. It's called The Epic Lies About Emotion. It's a really great conversation. Angela is a complete rock star. She is working with parents and kids and identifying steps so that we can break these cycles of trauma within our families, right? With the goal of being health and wholeness. And Kiara is doing great work in the exact same sphere. So without any further ado, I will introduce you to Kiara and let you hear our incredible conversation. Kiara, welcome so much to the Girl Like a Mother podcast. I don't know where my head's at today. I feel like things are slowly turning. So welcome. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be doing this. It's nice.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here and have somebody with your expertise able to chat with the audience and share some tips with us. I know we have a lot of things that we want to cover, but I'm curious before we dive in, what is sort of the motivation for you in doing this kind of work and helping people with their boundaries and their self-care and their mental health? Like, where does that come from for you?
What a good question. And people ask me that all the time, actually. So I'm the youngest of five, and my siblings are a lot older than me. And growing up, I learned a lot by watching them live their life, as you do as a youngest child. And so, like, my friends would always come to me and be like, Kira, I'm like struggling with this thing. And kind of just like grew from there. Like, I've always been like the people that come to you for help, to vent. And I just knew like I wanted to be the one in the world helping people. But I get too grossed out by like blood and guts and stuff. So I know I just want to be an actual medical doctor. Also, I help people, but it does not involve that field. And that led to me being a therapist. And I've actually been on this path since I was 12 years old. So I've dedicated my whole life to getting here. All my schoolwork throughout high school and college and grad school has all been to get me to this point, to like be the one to help people just get where they want to be in their life and have like this healthy and fulfilling life without the burden of being overwhelmed.
Sounds like you're sort of like born into it, born to do the work.
I guess so, yeah. Um, I've actually been working with a couple of therapist friends and I've done some human design on myself. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of that, but it's super cool, super accurate. And I found out that like, I'm a mental projector. And like when I found that out, it opened up so much more to myself. And it's like made everything like so much clearer. And like knew that I was on the right path.
I love human design. I'm a manifester, and once the more that I dig into it, the more I understand about myself and I can help relate to other people. It's such a helpful framework to be able to use.
Love it. I'm so ready to dive into it. I actually bought the book.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
And so the name of your practice and your company is incorporating that kind of like, is it
Literary counseling.
lunar counseling? Okay. Are
Yeah.
you into the woo? Like, do you bring in any of that cosmic stuff?
I'm into it, and I've always been into it. But I'm not practicing anything. I haven't done a whole lot of studies. I want to so badly, and like I'm like getting in that direction. But I've always felt connected to like the moon and the water because I've always been like my drive. And like for me, the moon goes through phases. We go through phases in our life. And that's I just feel like it is like the perfect name for my therapy practice because we're always changing, we're always going through different things in our life, and it just encompasses all of it. Just like one little cute title.
I love that. It does. It fits perfectly. And it kind of leads me into the first thing I want to chat with you about in that like we have these phases and we have times in our life that are a little bit easier and other times that are a little bit harder. And I personally find myself in therapy like in cycles as well. Like it's not all the time, but I'll go through something and I'm like, okay, now I need a little bit more support. And I'm curious about your take on how our coping skills in these different difficult, harder times, um, how they relate to self-care and how they may be similar or different than the self-care that we hear about.
Both things, self-care and coping skills, are super important, but they do two completely different things. So self-care are the rituals that we do like in a preemptive way. They're what we do to like help us be able to deal with stress, to build resiliency, to increase our physical, mental, and like emotional well-being. Coping skills are what we do in the moment. So like when you're in a stressful situation, like someone's yelling at your face, or you're in traffic and people are like beeping the horns and they're driving you crazy. And like you take some deep breaths, or you do some mindfulness grounding, or like do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like which is like where you 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. Like doing those things, those are coping skills. Self-care is like the intentional activities that you're doing, eating healthy, exercising, drinking all the water that you need, actually engaging in activities that you bring you joy, like whether it be crafting, reading books, spending time with family, going outside and like being in nature, like whatever it is, just having those roots of bringing joy consistently are so important because they're the foundation for your coping skills. Without self-care, coping skills won't do anything for you because your brain, your body is not there.
Yeah, it's like putting in the practice. I'm thinking of like, I don't know, for some reason I'm thinking about athletes doing their practice in preparation for the game. Like the game is where like the pedal hits the metal or like it's where it matters. Same as if when you're in a triggering situation or crisis mode or something happens where your regulatory system is engaged, those coping skills are useful because of the work you did with the self-care. Like they go hand in hand, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Whenever I work with people, I always tell them if you're going to use your coping skills, which I always make sure everyone I work with has at least 10 coping skills that they can do at any point in time. 5 you can do with just your body, 5 you can use with whatever they want it to be like with reading or you can talk to someone. But if they have to be practiced whenever you're in a calm state.
Mm.
Because if you're trying to use your coping skills whenever you're already activated, they're not going to help you because your brain's not going to know what to do. The same thing with self-care. The more you do it, the more your brain's going to be naturally in a calm state, and you're not going to be constantly awashed in adrenaline or cortisol, like making your body stressed, because you're automatically going to be bringing those levels down. So whenever things are stressful in your life, it's not as stressful long term.
Yeah. And I think that brings up a really good point in that it is so important for us to take care of ourselves, that self-care, while we're feeling healthy, like while before it becomes a problem, right? Because if we're not doing this preemptive work, like the foundation, laying the foundational stones to help support us when we do find ourselves in trauma or in overwhelm or in burnout, right? Our body it will force us to slow down. Do you find that a lot?
But it's true. And I have so many clients that I've worked with in the past and currently that have chronic health issues that have been starting from childhood because of just burning the candle at both ends, going without stopping. And and tell everyone all the time, like your body is not going to heal if you don't take the time to rest. Like it's so important to make sure like you're taking care of your physical and mental health because otherwise you will get sick. And it has been proven in numerous studies. I don't have anything offhand like actually to do it, but people can Google it. Um, but I have so many people that they don't know how to de-escalate their body because they've been so washed in adrenaline cortisol for their whole lives, and it's like led to like stomach ulcers. Some people have like ulcerative colitis. We know there's also like other like genetic and physical components to those things, but they're also so tied together. Like your gut is called your second brain. So that's why like if you're getting your body full of like alcohol, drugs, sugary foods, and your body's completely out of whack, and it's not going to work properly, and it will cause mental and emotional issues long term. That's why self-care is so important. Like, what you're putting in your body and like taking the rest, doing that actually bring you joy and fill your energy and not drain it is so important.
Yeah, I can personally share like my before and after story about that. Like I was running on such a high stress level for so long. I had adrenal burnout, just lost all my cortisol. Like it was a really bad burnout situation. And so it taught me I had to go looking, like they weren't all readily available at my fingertips. But like you have, in this podcast, you have them all right here at your fingertips that Kiara is sharing with us. But I went to find these tools, these different things that would work for me. And as I started practicing them and started to see what worked, because not every person is going to resonate with every tool. I love that you make sure that there's at least 10 coping mechanisms that your clients have to choose from. Not only will the same tools not work for everyone, but the same tool is not going to work in every situation either. So having that toolbox is helpful. But my point is, having now built up this arsenal, I react so differently in situations. I'm specifically thinking about when I'm parenting my kids and when they're triggering me, because now I can see it, I can recognize it, and I sort of it's almost as though I'm looking at it from an outside perspective rather than being in it. Does that make sense?
So that's so huge. That's actually a great factor. Like you show, like you saw like the progress you of yourself, where like you're in a triggering situation, but you've had like the self care and the coping skills so practiced that it became like muscle memory essentially. You could
Mm.
like not stay in the heightened states whenever you are triggered. And that's so huge, especially as a mom. I mean, I have two young kids myself, and I can sometimes I will admit, sometimes I get triggered, but just like just knowing yourself and knowing what coping skills work for you is huge. Like for me, it's taking time to go read a book. Just say, hey, I need 5 minutes. Just take time to myself. And then my husband's awesome and he'll pick up the slack in during this time. And it's just like you can just like reground yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the thing that was hardest for me, but has had the most impact, is setting good boundaries. And I know that you like to talk about setting boundaries, but sort of reframing the way that we use the I statements when we're doing that, because the way that we kind of hear about it might not be the exact right way to do it. Can you dive into that?
Yes. So I love teaching boundary setting with people. It's huge because I feel like communication or lack of communication skills is what causes a lot of stress within relationships in general. And if we can express ourselves in an effective way off the bat, it will decrease those conflicts like 10 to 1 because they're not there. So instead of saying, I feel angry when you don't call me when you come home late, and it sounds so much differently like, I feel so worried when I don't know where you are. Could you please call me? I know I use you in that situation, but it's still like saying, I feel worried because of it, because of, without using the word you. And since the word you is used in an I statement, I imagine it like in the castle, like the drawbridge is up. No one's gonna come in. No one's coming in. The archers are already on the top of it. They're gonna shove fire down on you. But when you say I statements in an effective way, the drawbridge is down. It's more of an open communication. Everyone's gonna be it's back and forth. There's no boundaries, no blockage. It's more open.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. And you're right. We do often hear about the importance of using an I statement, but then we throw a you in there and it kind of like deflects the power of the I statement a little bit.
It really does. And I work with couples, and I have one couple I can think of in my head. They were able to use I statements so effectively that uh, actually most of their problems stopped because they actually finally able to hear each other. Like there's a difference between listening and hearing too. Hearing that's when you actually processing it sticks to your brain. Listening is kind of just like, well, I'm sorry, maybe first that. Hearing is just to hear the noise. Listening is where it's like sitting in your brain and you're actually able to process it. When you're able to process what everyone's saying, then there's no more like ambiguity in what we're saying. Just so clear.
Yeah, I think anyone with toddlers understands that one, right? Like they hear you, but are they really listening? I say that to my 7-year-old all the time still. He's autistic and he has a little bit more trouble with the focus. And so I'm like, can you hear my words? Like, are you listening to me? Is it sinking in? Because sometimes people are, listening or hearing us, but they're not listening, and we're guilty of that too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. I think that a lot of the work is understanding our place in the problem and the solution, Like it's not just they're not listening, it's sometimes we're not listening or we're not using the right statements, right?
Well, I worked a lot with kids actually before I just did my private practice full time. And the amount of kids like, well, I'm using this, but my parents aren't listening to me. Like they don't care what I'm saying. Like, well, that might be true. But the purpose is, I say it's like you're still putting that boundary in place. And like, but we can't control what another person's doing. All we can control is how we respond to what someone's doing to us. I say respond, never react. Because a response is a conscious decision. A reaction is unconscious and it's usually the opposite of what you want to happen.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. My therapist recently told me because I was struggling with like, especially in the days before my period, I struggle a lot more with not being able to hold back on what I'm thinking. And I sometimes say I react in a rude way, specifically to my poor boyfriend. He's very sweet, and I attack him all the time during this period of 5 days. And she said something that was great, which feels important to share now, which is that the first reaction you have is your programming. But if you can just take a breath, you can make the second reaction like who you are now. So I thought that that was really profound in that having the ability to stop and take that coping breath, right? One of these coping tools, breath, and reframe really allows us to practice this work that you're talking about, right? And the self-care that I do allows me and builds me up so that I am actually calm when I take that breath. I can take advantage of the coping skill and transform the way that I show up in the conversation, which has been really huge.
Yeah, I think that's something too that people struggle with is our lives are so fast paced. And it's so hard to be like, okay, I need to take a break. But then like you have this constant pressure on you, like, well, no, I have to go, 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 go. But you really don't. Because we're not machines. And even machines need breaks. Like if we're constantly running our cars, they're gonna break down. All right, just like our bodies. So that's why the self-care and the breaks and like even like just taking that 2 second breath is so important. Because we don't need to respond immediately. It can take 5 seconds. It's totally fine. That way, it's like it's as long as it's a response that aligns with who you want to be and what the situation calls for. Because your actions are so it's in our animal brain. We don't want to be in our animal brain. We're not animals anymore. I mean, we still are animals, like biologically speaking, but we're so intellectual now. We don't have to stay there. We can have the more productive and life-giving conversations that people want to have now, and it can help foster human connection. Like take a breath, and things will be better.
Right, exactly. And something that I'm hearing more and more about is that we actually don't even have access to the parts of our brain, like that higher intellect, reasoning parts of our brain while we're in stress, like while we're feeling triggered, while we're in this state of fight or flight. Like we literally can't access that. So if we want to have these human connection moments, if we want to use our intellectual human brain, we have to use these tools to access it. Like it's the key.
That's so true. And oh my gosh, this is just when I work with kids, there's so many YouTube videos that talk about that show this so well. And I love doing them. But basically, if you imagine like your fist, and this is like your whole fist together is your whole brain. Like down here on the base of my hand, if you can really see it clear, um, is like your animal brain. And your finger part is your intellectual thinking brain. As soon as you get stressed or angry, they're not talking. You hit the whole hand. Like the space between is too hot. There's no way that you can connect. So you always want to have your brain like this, connected both together and not disconnected like this.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm going to share that with my kids. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
This has been so fun having you share with us these tools and these strategies. I want to make sure that we don't leave the conversation today without covering everything. Is there anything that I haven't touched on or that feels really important that you want everyone to hear today?
I want to know, like, if you're feeling any type of like constant headaches, constant fatigue, and mental fog, or digestive issues, to take a minute, do a full body scan, see what's really standing out to you, and maybe like have that be like a heads up, like, hey, I'm doing too much, and take the break. Or if you need help getting there, reach out to a therapist or your even doctor. I honestly recommend like a functional doctor because like they're huge and they work with your whole body. And I'm working with one currently and I love her to death. But like functional doctors or like even just your PCP, whoever you see, talk to them and get the help that you need so your body doesn't get burnt out. Especially if you're a mom, like you have little ones to take care of and you don't want to leave them in the lurch. So just like making sure you're taking care of you is so huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love when my guests give this permission to the audience, right? It's like we don't need the permission, but just to be reminded that like, oh yeah, no, we can take care of ourselves. It's important and we can reach out for help. That I think, especially for moms, is such a difficult piece is the reaching out for help. We wait because we want to be superhuman and we want to make sure we can do it all and we don't want to be seen as not as capable as Sally down the road or our sister-in-law or what our mother-in-law thinks we should be able to handle. Or there are so many societal pressures and comparisons, especially in a digital world. And I think really tuning into your own body, as you suggested with that body scan, is a really great way to start to go inward and say, oh, what is actually happening with me? What is my body telling me? And based on that, who can I reach out to? Who can help me best with this? And you don't have to know the best person to start, but literally reach out to anybody and start the process, you know? Um, and who better than Kiara? So please, I want to make sure that you guys know how to reach her, how to get in touch with her, how to work with her. Can you share with us the best way for listeners to get in touch?
So also the best way to reach out to me is through my website. It's www.lunar-counseling.com. And that's the best place. It has a lot about me and how I work with people on there. I do have a Facebook page, it's, Lunar Counseling LPC. The people can also, I put like some cute little Facebook memes on there, like some technical ed pieces. It's not really a place where you can actually get in touch with me, just like some quick tidbits of things. So like, but my website's like the best place to reach me. And I'm currently in Pennsylvania and Vermont, and I'm working on getting a license in Florida and South Carolina. So those are my current places where I'm able to work with people.
Amazing. That's so fantastic. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with us. It's such a treat to have someone with expertise like you do to be able to share on these really important topics that, yes, we talk about self-care, we talk about boundaries, we talk about all of these things in a very broad, sort of almost light way. In at least I'm seeing that in my feeds, and we're just sort of skimming the surface of what it actually means. And so to do a bit of a deeper dive into it has, at least for me, been really valuable. So I just want to thank you for
Yes.
your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. I love this so much. And I hope that
Good.
everyone got some like value out of it.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. And guys, if you had a tidbit that landed, shoot me a note, shoot Kiara a note, let us know what was it that landed specifically? Like what was useful? What are you going to try? What did you take away from this episode? Because we're here with the intention of speaking out to you, but we want to hear back as well because, it's a two-way conversation. At least that's how I think of it. So, um, let us know. And I guess then we're going to leave it here. This feels like a really good place to wrap. And I will say to all of the listeners, until next week, keep on growing like a mother.